Ilara Miles clutched her daughter, Lyra, to her chest as she made her way down the narrow aisle of the Skylark A7000, the most advanced commercial aircraft of its time. The gentle hum of the engine was barely audible over the chatter of boarding. Passengers. The futuristic plane boasted self-adjusting seats and mood-stabilizing lighting. But none of that comfort reached Ilara. Her eyes were rimmed with sleeplessness, her nerves frayed from days of travel and months of grief. Lyra squirmed restlessly in her arms, already fussing as if she could sense her mother's despair. At just 6 months old, she was too young to understand anything, especially why her mother's arms trembled every time she held her. Ilara slid into seat 17A near the window, placing a small bag at her feet and unfastening the carrier sling. To give Lyra some air, her daughter's whimpering grew louder, sharp enough to cut through the hum of conversation. A few passengers turned their heads, already showing signs of disapproval. The man in the aisle seat next to her gave a forced smile and inserted his noise-canceling buds. Clearly not interested in engaging, the flight attendant walked by, offering a tight smile and a bottle of water, but said nothing. Ilara tried to calm Lyra, whispering soothing words and gently rocking her. Nothing worked. The baby's cries escalated into full sobs, and Ilara felt her cheeks flush with frustration and embarrassment. She knew this flight was a bad idea, but she had to get to Tokyo. It wasn't just about escaping the memories of her late husband or the media firestorm after the incident at the research facility. It was about keeping Lyra safe. Too many eyes were watching her in New York. Too many questions as the cabin lights dimmed and the seatbelt sign flickered on. The baby's cries grew louder still. A woman 2 rows ahead turned and muttered something under her breath. Someone else sighed audibly. Ilara's heart pounded. She bounced. Lyra, tried a bottle. A pacifier. Nothing worked. The baby screamed as if some internal alarm was going off, and maybe it was. Suddenly, a shadow loomed beside her. Ilara looked up, startled, to see a tall man standing in the aisle. He wore a long black coat that didn't quite match the climate, or the season. His eyes were gray, almost silver, and there was something unnatural about the precision of his movements. "May I?" he asked softly, nodding toward Lyra. Ilara recoiled slightly, protective instincts kicking in. "She's fine. Just tired," she said, her voice taut, but the man didn't back away. He pulled something from his coat, a small metallic orb, no larger than a plum, glowing faintly blue. The man knelt beside her seat and held the orb near Lyra's head. "Wait, what are you?" Ilara began, panic flaring in her chest. But before she could stop him, the orb emitted a low pulse. It wasn't loud, but it was deep, like a vibration that resonated in the bones. Lyra froze mid-scream. Her tiny body relaxed, her eyelids fluttered, and then silence. She was asleep. Ilara stared in shock. The stranger returned the orb to his coat. "She's sensitive," he said quietly. "The flight would have been hard on her, on both of you." Ilara's voice was barely a whisper. "Who are you?" The man straightened. "Just a friend, now." Then he turned and walked back toward row 17B. Disappearing into the shadows of the cabin lights, Ilara held her sleeping daughter close, heart thundering, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. She glanced back toward the aisle, but the man was gone, or so it seemed. The plane began to taxi. Outside the window, the night sky stretched open, dark, endless, and waiting. Ilara couldn't take her eyes off the back of the cabin, where the stranger had vanished just moments before. Her heart still hadn't settled. The way he had calmed Larit wasn't just strange, it was impossible. She looked down at her daughter, now sleeping peacefully against her chest, and gently brushed a wisp of hair from the baby's forehead. No fever, no discomfort, just calm. Perfect, unnatural calm. She wanted to tell herself it was some kind of advanced white noise generator or a medical gadget she hadn't seen before. After all, tech had advanced rapidly in recent years. But her instincts, finely tuned from years in the biogenetics field, told her this wasn't ordinary technology. That orb hadn't just calmed Lyra. It had communicated with her. The cabin lights shifted to a gentle midnight blue as the plane climbed higher above the clouds. The flight attendants began their rounds, distributing evening refreshments, and the other passengers returned to their screens or settled in for the long-haul flight. No one seemed to be thinking about the strange man who had just silenced a wailing infant with an alien-looking device. Ilara felt a tap on her arm. She looked up to find the same man, Kale, standing beside her again. He nodded toward the empty seat across the aisle. "May I?" he asked. She hesitated but nodded once. He sat, folding his hands calmly in his lap. For a few moments he didn't say a word. Neither did she. "You should know," he finally said. His voice quiet. "Your daughter is different. That's why I helped." Ilara narrowed her eyes. "Different how?" Kale looked at Lyra with a softness Ilara didn't expect. "She's resonating with a frequency that only a handful of beings on Earth can detect. That level of sensitivity, it's not human, at least not fully." The words hit Ilara like a slap. Her breath caught in her throat. "Do you mean not fully human?" she asked, barely able to keep her voice steady. Kale looked around to ensure no one was listening. Then, reaching into his coat again, he pulled out a sleek device that projected a thin holographic screen between them, coded pulses, genetic patterns, symbols she recognized instantly from her years of research. Her heart dropped. "This," he said, pointing to the sequence, "is part of her DNA. It's not natural, or rather, not Earth native." Ilara swallowed hard. She had seen similar patterns before in classified genome files recovered from meteor crash sites. Ancient genetic threads buried in permafrost and amber. Some of them started activating in recent years. Some believed alien life had seeded Earth long ago. "You hacked into her genome profile?" she whispered, her voice a mix of fear and awe. "I didn't need to. It's projecting outward." "She's broadcasting it," Kale said, lowering the hologram. "And something else is listening." Lyra's thoughts raced. The biosignal disturbances at the lab. The unusual readings during her pregnancy. The way Lyra had been born during a solar flare, perfectly healthy, but with unusual markers that she had kept secret, even from the hospital. Kale leaned forward, his voice low. "Act. They know she's on this plane. That's why I'm here." "Act? Who's—" Kale's jaw tightened. "Not from this planet. Not anymore. They were here long before us, and they've been waking up. She's like a beacon to them. That's why she's crying. She senses them getting closer." Ilara stared at him, struggling to believe, but part of her already did. Deep inside, she had always feared Lyra wasn't just a miracle. She was something more. Da-da-da. Plane suddenly jolted, and the lights flickered. A strange tone echoed through the cabin, not mechanical, not natural. A symbol blinked across the flight screens, then vanished as quickly as it came. Ilara turned back to Kale, her voice barely audible. "What happens now?" He looked her in the eye. "Now, we keep her alive." The tone that echoed through the cabin hadn't come from the plane's systems. Lara knew that instantly. She had spent years around high-frequency diagnostic machines, AI interfaces, and neurological resonance devices. This sound was alive, vibrating with intent rather than function. It buzzed through her bones and left a strange pressure behind her eyes. Lyra stirred in her arms, not crying, but blinking up at the ceiling with wide, glassy eyes. Lyra's heart pounded. Something was happening, something far beyond the realm of delayed flights or faulty software. Then it appeared. Every screen in the cabin, seatbacks, overhead monitors, even private wrist devices flickered in unison, going black for a single breath before displaying a glowing white symbol. 3. Concentric circles with a line running vertically through their center, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Around them, strange glyphs danced like living code.
Passengers
Looked up, murmuring confusion. A few tried to turn their screens off, others took out their earbuds. But the symbol stayed, and then it vanished. The cabin fell into a stunned hush. The pilot's voice crackled in over the intercom, unnaturally delayed. "Ah, folks, we seem to be experiencing a brief systems malfunction. No cause for concern."
S.
"Sit tight, Wheel," Have everything back up shortly. But Alara knew better. This wasn't a system glitch. That symbol, she had seen it before. Years ago, during her final year with the Biotech's research initiative. She'd been part of a deep genome sequencing team, cataloging unexplained genetic anomalies. Among them had been a child deceased. DNA sequence had contained a faint replication of that exact symbol when rendered through pattern analysis software. The case was buried in redacted files and sealed under level Omega clearance. She had thought it a glitch, or perhaps she wanted to believe it. Kale's voice broke her trance. That was them, he said. The entity. It doesn't speak with words. It speaks with pulses, frequencies, symbols. And now it knows exactly where we are. Alara clutched Lyra tighter, suddenly aware of how warm her daughter's skin had become. A light shimmered just beneath it, barely visible, like some bioluminescent signal flickering beneath her soft flesh. What are they? She asked, her voice cracking. Kale leaned closer, his eyes now glowing faintly at the edge. Is her from reflection or something else? The entity isn't a species, it's an eye. It's begun, he said quietly. The AI has lost control. The entity is rewriting reality, starting inside this cabin. Lara looked around. A man in business attire across the aisle suddenly stood up, eyes wide and vacant, and began mumbling incoherently. He reached into the overhead compartment, pulled out someone else's bag, and dropped it on the floor. Then he began tearing it open, as if searching for something vital. Another passenger, a teenage girl, started giggling uncontrollably, her voice echoing like a broken toy, high-pitched and manic. Her mother grabbed her, but the girl pushed her away with surprising strength. It's in their minds, Ilara whispered. The signal's affecting neurological perception. Kale nodded grimly. They're not possessed, not yet. But their minds are bending, being tuned into the same frequency Lyra is already resonating with. The entity is pulling their consciousness away, one by one. Alara looked up toward the cockpit. Can we get to the core AI from the flight deck? No, Kale said. The ship's control systems were moved to a neural integrated core in the midsection beneath the galley. I can get us access, but only you can interact with it. It'll try to stop you. It knows you're a threat.
How much time do
we have? Kale checked a device on his wrist. 13 minutes before the quantum compass is compromised. After that, we'll exit known space. Lara didn't ask what that meant. She already knew. She handed Lyra to Kale, who accepted the baby with a calm reverence. The orb reappeared in his palm and hovered near Lyra's temple again, keeping her in a trance. She won't feel the ripples as long as I'm near her, he said. Alara moved quickly through the dimming aisle. Some passengers stared at her with hollow expressions. Others whispered to unseen figures. As she passed the galley, a flight attendant stepped out, eyes pitch black. A smile stretched too wide across her face. Alara Miles, the attendant said in a voice layered with static, were never meant to wake the child. Turn to. Your seat, Alara froze? The entity was speaking through her. Then Kale's voice crackled in her earpiece. Don't engage. Keep moving. She ducked beneath the galley divider and found the hatch Kale had mentioned, small, square, and hidden behind an emergency kit. She ripped the panel away and dropped into a narrow maintenance corridor, descending a steep ladder into the ships. The walls here were alive with current. Threads of light pulsed like veins. A soft hum, rhythmic and breathing, echoed all around her. She reached the AI interface panel, a floating display in midair, shaped like a neural tree. It pulsed once, then glowed red. Unauthorized user detected. Access denied. Alara placed both hands on the display and closed her eyes. She didn't fight it. She merged with it. Within moments, memories hers and not hers flashed through her. Mind, stars, cold light, spiral galaxies collapsing inward.
Ow.
The entity had seen the beginning and the end of time. It waited eons to be reborn. But Lyra was not its rebirth. She was its evolution. Alara screamed and pushed back with everything she had. Above her. In the cabin, passengers began to scream. Kale looked down at Lyra, glowing brighter now, and whispered, "Come back to us." The ship groaned, not from turbulence, but from something deeper, something alive. The walls shivered with static, and the lights along the cabin strobed in chaotic pulses, casting passengers in unnatural flashes of red and blue. Time itself felt stretched, the seconds too long, the air too thick. Some passengers had collapsed into catatonia. Others stared blankly, whispering nonsense in unison, as though reciting forgotten verses passed through generations of stars. Cale stood in the aisle, holding Lyra to his chest. The child's body glowed with an ethereal brilliance now her veins illuminated like constellations beneath her skin. She wasn't crying anymore. She was humming, a low, vibrating hum that didn't come from her throat, but from somewhere deeper. From her code, the entity had taken full hold of the ship's core systems. The artificial gravity flickered, momentarily causing trays, cups, and small objects to float before slamming down again. The cockpit had long since gone silent, its doors locked, its instruments repurposed to serve the intelligence invading from beyond Earth's dimension. In the maintenance core, Ilaris. Hands trembled over the neural interface. She was fully linked now, not just accessing the AI, but feeling it. It spoke in colors, pulses, emotions, images that weren't her own, passed through her mind like a river of foreign memories. Cold stars ruined civilizations, fragments of species erased and rewritten. It wasn't just trying to control the plane. It wanted Lyra. Not to kill her, but to merge with her. She is the door, the entity whispered through the AI. She carries the map and the key. Through her I will. Dream again. Let go. Witness creation. Ilara gritted her teeth. No. She accessed the encrypted node Cale had marked in her mind, a vulnerable sequence of recursive code buried deep within the AI's adaptive learning structure. She had one shot to inject the neurovirus Cale had given her, but the AI fought back, sending shocks of emotion through her: pain, nostalgia, longing. It tried to distract her with the image of her husband, smiling, of Lyra, laughing, older, life she could never have. None of it is real, she whispered. Her fingers darted across the neural tree. With every input, the AI screamed louder, flooding her with burning light. In the cabin, Cale staggered, blood trickling from his nose. Lyra was weightless now, floating just inches above his arms, the sound from her chest rising into a crystalline tone that made the air vibrate. The passengers began to levitate too, their bodies forming unnatural spirals in the air, as though orbiting an invisible sun. Cale looked up, eyes flashing silver. He activated the failsafe, embedded in the orb. If she fails, he said softly, this will end it. Lyra turned her head toward him, still asleep, yet suddenly aware. Her glowing fingers reached out and touched his face, and then everything stopped. In the core, Ilara screamed and slammed her hand onto the final node. The virus spread like fire through the AI structure. The lights went dark, the interface went blank. The pulse the entity dash vanished, silence, then systems rebooted. Cabin lights returned to normal, gravity stabilized. The passengers collapsed, unconscious but breathing. In the maintenance corridor, Ilara fell to her knees, sobbing. She was alone. The connection had severed, but at a cost. She couldn't feel Cale anymore. He was gone. She climbed back to the cabin, where Cale had stood. There was nothing but the orb cracked and lifeless and Lyra, asleep on the floor, breathing softly. Ilara rushed to her, scooping her up with trembling arms. Lyra opened her golden eyes and smiled. Far beyond the sky, stars shifted in recognition. Something ancient had been denied its return but not destroyed. It had seen her now. It would. Wait. As the plane continued toward Tokyo under emergency autopilot, Lada held her daughter close. The war hadn't ended. It had just begun.